All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Allison. I am a grateful recovered alcoholic. My sobriety date is July 7th, 2010. And for that day, I'm eternally grateful. I have a home group. It's the Pleasant Valley Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. We are on Zoom on Monday nights. We do a big book study, and we're in person on Thursday nights. It's a literature meeting, and we're in the big book as of right now. We do study the big book in not as a primary purpose meeting does, but as experientially from the language of the heart, and is the best big book study in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, because it's the only one. I have a sponsor. Her name's Sarah Smith. She lives in Portsmouth, Ohio. She does not mind me using her full name. So if you're ever in Portsmouth, Ohio, please look her up. She has been my sponsor since I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous in 2008. My sobriety date's in 2010. I've never felt the need to sponsor jump, and I'm eternally grateful to that woman. She showed me what Alcoholics Anonymous is, and she showed me how to live a sober, beautiful life. And so hopefully I can do that today for you. What I can tell you is, when Risa asked me to do this, I like to be honest and transparent. She's been trying to get me to do this for a while, and I'm not a primary purpose girl. I love the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I live the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I take the women I sponsor through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm more of a language of the heart kind of girl. I'm not a line by line primary purpose girl. So I'm going to do the best I can, and hopefully by the time I get done, you guys will be able to see how I'll be able to show you precisely how we have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. My buddy Ron is on here, and he's sitting in a treatment center across the river, and that's who I'm here to talk to today. That's who I'm here to talk to, the alcoholic who still suffers, and the newcomer on this meeting, because AA has absolutely saved my life. It brought me to the God of my own understanding, and has brought me to a life that's indescribably wonderful. And what I can tell you is, I got up this morning, I didn't madly search for a bottle. I got up this morning, I didn't have to cuss anybody out. I didn't have to, I got up this morning, and what I can tell you is I hit my knees, and I thank God for that, for another day sober and alive and waking me up. And I got to have some meditation and some quiet time. And then I got up and I watched the birds on the bird feeder out behind me. And, and I got to have coffee with my husband. And to me, that's what sobriety looks like. That's what the recovered alcoholic looks like in the eyes of this girl. And people showed me how to live a sober way of life. And I can know all this self-knowledge. I can know all this stuff in the Big Book, but I don't apply it to my life. It doesn't mean anything. All I have is self-knowledge, and then, self-knowledge does not keep me sober in this deal. I wish it did, because I think I'm pretty smart. And if it did, I would have been sober a long time ago. But if you turn to the Big Book, if you turn to the very first page in the Big Book, actually not the very first page, but the title page where it says Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a huge promise. It's one of the very first promises in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it says the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. And it's this huge hope that the Big Book offers me when I first open this book, and it gives me the ability that, hey, these people have recovered, many thousands of men and women. Maybe, just maybe I can do that too. Just maybe. And I go back to, what does that mean? What does that recovered mean? I have no clue what that recovered means when I first opened this book. Hence the reason for a sponsor, hence the reason for a home group, hence for the reason for the people, the members of Alcoholics Anonymous, to show me what all this is. And, when I look at what the word recovered means, and I announced myself as a recovered alcoholic when I first, said my name, and it doesn't mean that I can drink successfully. It doesn't mean that one day that I'm going to be immune from alcohol, that, I can drink a couple of drinks and be okay. What that means, if I turn into the forward to the first edition, X, I. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a Roman numeral, by the way. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered. It says, from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, which means I no longer have to dance with that demon every single day. You know, it means that I don't have to madly search for a bottle when I wake up in the morning. It means that I react sanely and normally to situations which used to baffle us, especially when it pertains to alcohol. You know, and that is one of the most hugest promises that Alcoholics Anonymous offers me. You know, it's really the only promise. I mean, there's tons and tons of promises in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's the very first one, you know, that the Big Book offers me. And it's like, wow, you know, I don't have to live in that insanity anymore. I don't have to go against every bit of my being and will. You know, I don't know, you know, to pick up another drink of alcohol on a daily basis. I can live a purposeful and useful life. What's that look like? You know, and the purpose of this foundation meeting, you know, when I think of a foundation, it's, you know, it's a base, it's a support, you know, that you build upon. You know, you build upon something, and you know, the purpose of the foundation meeting is to find a base, what Alcoholics Anonymous is, what it's not, and it provides a very clear and direct description of the disease of alcoholism in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, and I hope when I get through here today, that's what I have done for you. And you know, I have to have something to build upon. And when I think about Alcoholics Anonymous, when I came into AA, I didn't know what AA was. There were so many misconceptions of what that looked like. And, you know, I'm in healthcare, and I really didn't know what AA was, you know, and it's not a self-help program. It's not a therapy session. You know, we don't, we're not a banker for your spree, or a banker or a nurse for your sprees, a banker for your financial problems. We don't solve your marital problems. We don't do any of that. You know, AA, the only thing AA has to offer is a spiritual program of action through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, you know, and it's important for me to understand that's what AA is. And, you know, when I think about what Bill Wilson wrote in 1942, it says, our chief responsibility to the newcomer is an adequate presentation of the program. And am I providing that to the newcomer who walks into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous? Do I look like a recovered alcoholic? Not look, do I act? Do I show what a recovered alcoholic is? What I can tell you is my first introduction to Alcoholics Anonymous was in a treatment center in 2008. It was Thanksgiving Day, and I couldn't figure out why. There was probably 100 people that came into a treatment center and brought the good news of what Alcoholics Anonymous had done in their life, what the God of their own understanding had done in their life. And, you know, and they showed me what Alcoholics Anonymous was. They were happy. They smelled good. They brought really good coffee. I couldn't have caffeine. I couldn't have chocolate. You know, we couldn't have sugar in where I was in treatment. And they brought all those things in. But most importantly, I remember how they talked about what AA and God had done in their life and what their life looked like, you know, what their life looked like today, being a recovered alcoholic and not drinking. And they didn't say, you know, they showed, they didn't talk. Their actions showed everything that a recovered alcoholic was. They had recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And I wanted what they had, but I didn't want to do what they did, you know, and that was 2008. And, you know, I had to first understand what alcoholism was, because what I can tell you is for many, many years, I drank alcoholically. My first drink of alcohol was off strawberry extract when I was 15 years old. Yes, you can get intoxicated off strawberry extract if you drink enough. Alcohol did for me what I couldn't do for myself. It solved every problem, the fear, the not good enough, the not pretty enough, the, you know, the absolute internal fear. You know, fear drove me my entire life. When I was a little girl, I remember hiding under the covers, and it, most importantly, it solved that fear problem for me. You know, it made it all go away. And so I had to understand what alcoholism was and what the problem was. And If I look to page 30 in your book, it says, we learned we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. It says this is the first step in recovery. And I had to fully concede that I was alcoholic. I could not start this journey off on a lie that maybe I still have control, maybe I still have power, maybe maybe I can drink just one and it'll be fine. And maybe after a period of abstinence, just not drinking with no program, I can go back out and drink successfully. I had to fully concede from my head to my heart that I could not do this anymore. And that first step, I can't start that journey off on that lie. If I do, the remainder of the 11 steps don't mean anything. They mean absolutely nothing. And so I had to fully understand the implications of step one. And what does that look like? I had so much misunderstanding of what an alcoholic was. I grew up in a home of, I wouldn't say luxury, but I had everything that I could ever wanted as a little girl, all the love, all the external things, I had everything that I could have ever wanted, everything external that I could ever want. And my parents are good, hardworking people. They love me with every ounce of their being, and they still love me with every ounce of their being. I did not grow up in an alcoholic home. I did not grow up with any alcoholics around me. That doesn't make me alcoholic. I had so many misconceptions. I always thought the alcoholic was the man under the bridge drinking out of the brown paper bag, and was homeless. And that is so not true. I'll tell you, I'm a nurse, and you people would come in the emergency room, and I would stand up on my judgment. Here I am. I'm way above you, and I would say, how could you do that to your family? Why can't you just stop? Why would you do that to your children? And the list goes on and on and on and on. It was all those misconceptions of what alcoholism was. And it wasn't until I had my own experience with this, of the disease of alcoholism, and my own experiences showed me that I am 100% powerless over alcohol, and I have no control. And and I go back to what does all that mean? What does all that mean? And when I go back to page, let's see here. Oh, Roman numeral XXV. It says, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy. That the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. And I have this allergy. I react abnormally to alcohol. Simple as that. I just react abnormally. The normal drinker, that doesn't happen to them. The normal drinker says, take my mom, for instance. I'll just use my mom as an example. When she was younger, she would tell the story. My dad and her would tell the story that she had too many strawberry daiquiris, and she danced on top of the piano, and she was feeling it. And my mom is a little prim and proper lady, and she quit drinking. She just said, oh, I'll just have one. It caused her a little consequence, and she might have one strawberry daiquiri, and she puts it down. She's starting to feel it. She doesn't like that. She doesn't like that sensation. She doesn't like that, what the alcohol, the effect produced by alcohol. She doesn't like any of those things. But me, on the other hand, on the same page, at the very bottom, it says, why I drink. It says men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, it's going to cause all kinds of troubles. They cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. And I live in this delusion that, it's going to be different, but I love the effect produced by alcohol, and I'm 100% powerless over alcohol, and I can't not drink, because it is my solution for everything. When I'm happy, when I'm sad, when it's good, when it's bad, when it's snowing, when it's sunshine, and whatever it looks like, I have to drink. it is my solution. And and it goes back to, when I look back, it says the only, oh, well, I don't know where I'm at, but the only the only relief is on page XXX. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. What? You don't want me to drink? That's what you have for me, is entire abstinence. That's all you got? And man, I can't do that because I have to drink. It's my solution for everything. And I don't know how to not drink. I don't know how not to put something in my body to make me feel purposeful and usefully whole. I have to have those things in order to live on this earth and to solve the fear problem and to be able to walk one-on-one with you. And when I think about drinking, and I think about my alcoholism, and it's the first one that gets me every time. I put the first one in. I'm as physically sober as I'm ever going to be right now. And hopefully most of us are physically sober on this screen today, and I'm as physically sober as I'm ever going to be. So why is it when I'm physically sober as I'm ever going to be that I go to the liquor store and I pick up a bottle? I'm going beyond something beyond my mental control. I'll give you this example. I told you I was a nurse, and I did lots of outside issues, as some of you probably do. And there's a singleness of purpose in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that singleness of purpose is that, we deal with alcoholics, and I am an alcoholic. I can't drink successfully, but I did a lot of outside issues as well. And what I'm going to tell you is, I was as physically sober as I was ever going to be. I'm powerless over alcohol, and I had this mental obsession. I had this allergy. And when my disease says it's time to go, it's time to go. And it doesn't matter what's going to get in my way. It doesn't matter if I've got a court date. It doesn't matter if I have outstanding consequences, DUIs. It doesn't matter if, my kids have been taken away. None of that stuff matters. None of that matters. When my disease says it's time to go, I have to go. And it's all I think about. And, I was physically sober as I was ever going to be. And I walked into this hospital in the middle of the night. I worked day shift. I walked in there at 2 a.m. and my coworkers are performing CPR on a patient. and nobody's around, and I walk over to that Omnicell where we dispense our medications, and I take what I need. And I walk out of that place. Now, I was physically sober as I was ever going to be, and I told everybody that I wasn't going to drink. I wasn't going to do any of those outside issues. I wasn't going to do it. And I meant it from the bottom of my heart. But I'm absolutely powerless over alcohol. My disease says it's time to go. I have to go. It's beyond my mental control. It's absolutely beyond my mental control. And I walked out of that place, and, I'm like the boy whistling in the dark. No one's going to know. It'll be different this time. The outcome's going to be different. No one will know. And what I can tell you is the outcome wasn't different. It's the first one that got me. And next thing I know, I'm at the liquor store, and, it goes on and on and on and on and on. And I don't stop until I'm locked up, passed out. My kids will tell you that I came home from every night from work and I would puke, pass out, drink tons of wine. I love wine. I drink a box, not a bottle. I drink out of a big Speedway cup or 7-Eleven cup, whatever that looks like. And, and I drank out of the box, the big box of wine, because no one would know how much you're drinking. It's aluminum, and you would just throw it away and replace it, and no one would ever know. You can't see inside of it. And, but I'm going beyond. I have to drink, but I meant it when I told those people that my kids, my parents, when I wasn't going to drink, I told them I wasn't going to drink, and I meant it with all my heart, but I'm powerless over alcohol. And it takes that experience for me, from my head to my heart, to truly understand what that is, and what the disease of alcoholism is, and what it looks like in my life. because if I could just read this, I have to have my own experiences with this book. You guys can tell me all your experiences and all those things, but until I have my own experience, when it comes from my head to my heart, when I have my own experiences, when I can say, oh, okay, I understand that. I can relate to that. Yep, that's me too. Me too. And you guys got me hook, line, and sinker. I'm all in. I'm all in this deal because I know without a shadow of a doubt that I am just like you guys. I am an alcoholic and I'm powerless over alcohol. And, when I look at that on page 22, I've already described it to you, but it says we are equally positive at the very bottom that once he takes any alcohol, whatever, into his system, something happens both in the bodily, which is the allergy. When I think about that, I react abnormally, and the mental, which is the obsession sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. And, I just described that, how it manifests in my life and how it looks in this alcoholic, and I have to think about, I would encourage you to think about how it manifests in your life and what it looks like in your life, and to match your experience with what I just described my experience to. And so therefore the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body. And, if someone just told me, just don't drink, for a real alcoholic like me, just don't drink, doesn't work. I have to have a solution. And, if just not drinking or, drag your butt to the, put yourself in a wheelbarrow and drag your butt to an AA meeting and don't, and whatever, all those things that people say in Alcoholics Anonymous, if that worked for me, I wouldn't need Alcoholics Anonymous. I wouldn't be here at 10 o'clock in the morning. I wouldn't be here sharing my experience and on this foundation meeting. I wouldn't need to be. I wouldn't need to be doing that if my very life didn't depend upon this, to carry the message to the alcoholic who still suffers as a recovered alcoholic. I wouldn't need to do these things in order to stay alive. If I didn't truly believe that I have an allergy, and I react abnormally and I mentally obsess over alcohol, that's step one. If I didn't truly believe in that first step in Alcoholics Anonymous, then I wouldn't need to be here. So if I look at the lack of choice, on page 24, the fact is, and the italics, and those squiggly lines, and this is the fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, which means uncertain, have lost the power of choice and drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. You mean I'm defenseless against the first drink? That's that hopeless state of mind and body that I get to. I'm absolutely hopeless, and there's got to be a way out. And if I take my finger across that line, across the very top to the other, page 25 in the italics, it says there's a huge promise. From that paragraph, when they write italics in this book, at the time it was written, it was really expensive for them to do that. And so I need to pay really close attention to what those italics say. And so if I take my finger and I go across, it says there is a solution. And it gives me hope from I'm without defense against the first drink to page 25 that there is a solution. What is that solution? It says almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation, which means completion. But it goes on to say, but we saw that it really worked in others, and we had to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. And I saw it work in other people's lives. I saw it work in the four men who would spoon feed me the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to a greasy-haired girl who didn't care about herself, who looked down at her shoes, and they would spoon feed me the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. They were never inappropriate. They were never off color. They never did any of those things. All they wanted was this girl to survive and carry the message to another alcoholic. But they would spoon feed me the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they would give me all these miraculous things. I'm like, where are they coming up with all that awesome stuff? It's like, what is that stuff? It's like jiu-jitsu or whatever. I can't even say the word, but it's like, where is that coming from? And I'm like, man, they are so smart. And it wasn't until I realized I came to that hopeless state of mind and body in my own life, and I began to pick up the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, because what I can tell you is I used my big book for a bed. The middle of my bed frame wouldn't go down, so I used it as a stopper for that, and I would put my big book there, and it's got a big indention in it, that and my 12 and 12. And that's what I did for 2 years in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I almost died. And but they would spoon feed me the big book, and thank God for those men. Thank goodness for that sponsor that showed me. She continued to show me the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I always looked for that human power to fix me. And the only thing AA has to offer is to go into the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of my intolerable situation, or accept spiritual help. It's as simple as that. And it's not that simple for an alcoholic like me. Do I want to accept spiritual help? I don't know about that God idea, man. I don't know about that. Or go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of my intolerable situation. So if I can answer these two questions on page 44, it says, if when I honestly want to, and can I quit entirely? You mean, can I quit drinking entirely? You mean like 365 days a year, 24 hours a day? Can I quit entirely? That means entire abstinence, no pill form alcohol, no, none of those things. You mean you want me to quit entirely? I don't know. I know this girl can. I can't when I want to quit entirely. Or if when drinking, do you have any control over the amount you take? Yes or no? Well, if you can answer to those questions to your satisfaction, you're probably alcoholic. And for me, it was like, oh, what a devastating blow. It knocks the wind out of my sails. But what I can tell you today is it's the most absolute biggest blessing in my life. But when I was asked those questions in the beginning, I was like, oh man, you mean I have to do all these things in order to stay sober and live a purposeful, useful life? That's what you want me to do? And it's like, what an order. I can't go through with it. But it says, do not be discouraged, None of us do this perfectly. I've never done AA perfectly. I've done the first step perfectly, but I've never done Alcoholics Anonymous perfectly. If I told you I did, I would be telling you a big lie, and this still requires me to be honest, and most importantly, honest with myself. Honesty, thoroughness, and willingness, and and I've got to be honest with that. Within myself, that I am alcoholic, and I have a hopeless, I was at a hopeless state of mind and body, and what do I have to do in order to stay alive? And, I look at that solution. What is the solution? We got to that on page 25. What is the solution? Well, it's this God idea, this higher power, this supreme being, this, whatever you want to call it, it's your own conception. When I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I shut my door on that God idea a long time ago, many years ago. My oldest son's father passed away when I was 18 years old. And how could how could a God do that? How could a God allow a child to grow up without his dad? Blah, 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 blah. I went on and on and on. And what I know today is God doesn't take people, God receives people. That is called life. People are born and people pass away. It's life. And when I was able to see that, and alcohol beat me to the state of absolute hopelessness, I was willing to believe that there was something, because I saw it working in y'all's life. I saw it working in your life, and I saw that your life was on fire. I saw you guys, you were clean, and you had good lives, and you had, you had friends, and you loved people, and you were kind, and you were helpful. And, and I wanted to be like that. I didn't care all the external stuff you had. I was making $100,000 a year before I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. And what I can tell you is when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I had nothing. I lived out of a food pantry. I had tires that may have some tread on them and may not, you know. And I wasn't too proud to go work for $6.50 an hour. I did what I had to do when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, and you guys showed me, Alcoholics Anonymous. And so anyway, when I look at that solution and that spiritual awakening, and I look at the God idea, either I'm willing to believe in something, or on page 47, it says, when therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. This applies too of other spiritual expressions, which you find in this book. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. At the start, meaning in the very beginning, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth. To affect our first conscious relation with God as we understood him. And it says, afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which then seemed entirely out of reach. So when I first began this journey, I just had this willingness to believe in something, that there was something out there. I saw it work in your life. I saw it work in my sponsor's life. What I can tell you is I was resentful at my sponsor because she didn't keep me sober. Had I read my big book, it says no human power can keep me sober. No human power. No house, no car, no job, no kids, no husband, no wife. None of those things, nothing external can keep me sober. I had to seek a power. And and so I was dying in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I called Ryan, who is my husband now. And I said, I'm dying and I don't know what to do. And he said, why don't you call Sarah? And I said, I can't call her. She didn't keep me sober. I didn't say those exact words, but it was around about that. And he's like, let me make a few phone calls. And at that point, I was absolutely hopeless. And he called Jim and he called me back and he said, Allison, I need for you to be at Jim's house tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. And, and prior to that phone call to Ryan, because I saw God work in his life and I saw he was always happy, always bubbly, always positive, always kind, always hopeful. And what you see with him is what you get. He's always like that. It's very few and far between that he's off. And when he does fall off, him and his sponsees, we all make a big deal about it and laugh because it doesn't happen very often. But what I can tell you is I came to believe after 3 trips around the block and the 3rd trip into the liquor store parking lot, as I was sitting there. And I said, God, I'm holding on that steering wheel and I'm holding on that steering wheel so tight, and I've got to drink because I am powerless over alcohol and I'm going to I have this mental obsession that I got to have it. And it's beyond my control. And, and I remember in Alcoholics Anonymous, you guys said, pray to that God that you don't believe in. But I had never came to that hopeless state of mind and body that I wanted to pray to that God that I didn't believe in until alcohol beat me into a state of reasonableness. And I was holding onto that steering wheel so tight and I'm sweating. If you guys know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm holding on that steering wheel and I've got to drink. It's my only solution. It was the first time in my entire life because I did not want to drink. I held on that steering wheel and for the first time I said, God, please help me. I can't do this today. And God entered into my heart and I came to believe in a liquor store parking lot that day. And I picked up the phone and I called Ryan. And that's how I ended up at Jim's the next day. What I'm going to tell you is the next day, it was snowing. Southern girls didn't drive in the snow. I didn't live in West Virginia at the time. And I woke up and I was feeling better the next day. And the only thing Ryan asked me, he says, do you want to live or do you want to die? I said, I want to live. And he said, well, I suggest you get in the car and go to Jim's house. And it's that first faith. I went to somebody's house. It's the only place in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the only place that you go to. You drive to somewhere, you don't know where you're going. You get there and you don't know who you're going to meet. And then when you leave, you don't know where you've been. It's the only place it happens like that, but I had this faith that it was going to be okay. It was the first time in my life that I felt at peace, 100% at peace, that it was going to be okay no matter what. When I got out of my car and there was a bunch of snow on the ground, and I fell in the snow. And at that point I had a mouth like I used to say a trucker, but that's not very appropriate because that's being judgmental. But I had a mouth that wasn't very spiritual. How about that? And so, and I fell in the snow, and I get up and I'm soaking wet. And I'm like, I go knock on this man's door, and this old bald man answers the door, and he's got this big smile on his face. And it's like, I could breathe. You know why? Because I could see God in him. And I knew it was going to be okay. I could see the God in his eyes. And I could see that the only thing that he wanted to do was help a girl who was still sick and suffering from the disease of alcoholism. And just maybe, she can carry the message to another alcoholic who still suffers. And just maybe another woman will have to live that hopeless state of mind and body. And maybe that her life will change. And that's how I came to believe and got connected to the God of my understanding. And that spiritual awakening for me when I left Jim's house, he calls me awesome to this day. When I was looking in that mirror that day, and I said, I'm not so bad. I'm pretty awesome when I'm not drinking. And the name stuck, awesome, because I had that connection through the 12 steps. He took me through the first 9 steps that day. And through that spiritual awakening, I was armed with some big chunks of truth about who and what Allison Corvo is. And the wrath that it had caused in so many people's lives. All the people about me I negatively affected. But most importantly, I got connected to that God who was going to solve all my problems. This deal's not about drinking anymore for me. The first step is the only step that talks about alcohol. I got a living problem. If the solution was just don't drink, I just wouldn't drink. And life would be great and everything would be perfect. And I live happily ever after, and all the people about me live happily ever after, and it's okay. But I'm selfish and self-centered to the core. If I turn to page 62, the selfishness and self-centeredness, it takes a hard right turn when you're leading to the third step. And it says that we think is the root of our troubles. You mean the alcohol's not the problem? Huh? What's that about? It's me. I am the problem. You're not the problem. The kids aren't the problem. The job's not the problem. I am the problem. I think the world should revolve around me, myself, and I. In order to combat that, I have to be connected to this God. Because so I don't propel through self-will my entire life. I've already done that. I have to be rid of this selfishness. I must be rid of it, or it kills me. It doesn't mean that I'm going to die a physical death. It means I die spiritually. Within, I come back to that insanity and that delusion that maybe a drink will solve the problem. Without that God, I have to have, without that God, I'm sitting here with me. When it says that on bottom of page 62, it says this is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal. We are his agents. He is the father, and we are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was a keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. So I'm going to live by this in this drama of life, because life is a drama. It's a drama, right? But it doesn't have to be a drama. No, it doesn't have to be a drama. If I live by most good ideas are simple, then I have this keystone of this structure, a keystone of an arch. It holds the whole structure together. And without that keystone, without this, God's going to be my director, and he's going to be my agent, and I'm going to be his agent, and God's going to be the director. Without that, I don't have a keystone, and my whole structure crumbles. The next thing you know, I'm sitting there with a bottle in my hand, going, how'd this happen again? How'd this happen again? Thank God that Alcoholics Anonymous is not a religious program. It's a spiritual program of nature, and I can believe whatever I want to believe in. Thank goodness for that. It's the God of my own understanding. It's the God within me, and it's the God within you. The God within me connects with the God within you, and the next thing you know, I have these beautiful relationships with the beautiful people on the screen. And and who would ever thought? Who would ever thought Risa and Ron would have come down here in August and that we would have hung out? Who would have thought I would have met Ron in person the other night at our home group? And who would have thought that Jeremy would have come over here and started a fire, for a hog roast? Who would have thought Joel would be my big brother? Who would have thought that would have had, all these people, Eugene in the middle of a COVID pandemic would have helped us navigate through COVID on Zoom? Who would have thought that Christina would have been, a part of my life? Who would have thought those things? God knew all along when I become hopeless, and when I become absolutely hopeless, and I say, okay, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a solution. There's got to be something that's going to combat this disease of alcoholism. And yes, there is something vastly more. It is Alcoholics Anonymous. It is it's the capital F Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's just not going to meetings. It's not just going to meetings. It has to be the whole program. Meetings, 12 steps, being of service. Being of service is what does that look like? My real purpose is to fit myself to be a maximum service to God and the people about me. It's not about what Allison wants anymore. Do I still think it should be? Absolutely. Absolutely. Just asked my husband yesterday, but thank goodness I have a program today that gets me right sized and humbles me and gets me to exactly where I need to be. It's right here, right now, carrying the message of Alcoholics Anonymous with you guys. Who would ever thought that? And I'm so grateful to be a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm so grateful to have a solution today that solves all my problems. And it's contained in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. If I take the 12 steps with someone who's been through the journey, through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is our primary text, and have a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, and then carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous to another sick and suffering alcoholic, I become part of the big capital F of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I would not have missed it for the world. It's an experience you must not miss. And I hope that I've said something today that would help someone who's still sick and suffering. And maybe I'm always available and my phone's always on. I love you guys, and thank you for letting me be of service. I'll pass.